Hey guys, you already know from the thumbnail that we're going to be doing something a little bit different this time. I got this idea from my wooden saltwater popper torture test video, which I'll put a link for if you haven't already seen it. Anyway, let's get started making a 5-inch stick bait lure, shall we? What we've got is a 5-inch stick bait. What I want here is to do something that's pretty simple. There's no joint, there's no rattle, there's no lip, nothing like that. It's just a simple stick bait. It's going to be a sinking bait, so I'll need to put some weight in the bottom. I'm trying to make this out of a piece of 1x material that I have, poplar. And so my maximum dimension is 1.5 inches tall, and I'm going slightly under that just to give myself some room. And then my width is 3/4 inch. So I'm thinking this will be a nice size bait that will work in both freshwater and saltwater. So I'm hoping it'll be a pretty versatile bait. Now you can see the top profile I've got here. It's going to taper, of course, towards the back pretty heavily, and then the rounded nose. I've got a couple of square parts here. I'm actually going to try and round that out. I don't want any flat parts on this lure. I'm planning on 3/8 inch eyes, and then my attachment points like so. I don't think I'm going to do through wire. I'm thinking that I'm just going to do the twist wire attachments on this, because that's definitely enough for freshwater, and anything I would use for this lure for will be able to handle with the twist wire. So what I may do is just make these front and back a bit longer, possibly the belly one, just angle it in such a way so I can get the maximum length. But I think if I epoxy those in, they'll be plenty secure. I'm not sure exactly how symmetrical my little sketch is, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it and draw each half. That way I know that I'm symmetrical when I'm done. Alright, that just removes a big bunch of wood. Now we can hit it with the sandpaper and get it rounded out. Alright, let's reconfigure here. There we go. Alright, that allows us to sand the sides. All right, that's pretty decent. I'm going to go back over it and do the same thing. There's a few little parts here that I'm not happy with, but I'm going to switch to a 180 grit and go over the whole thing again and just get it smoothed up a little bit more. But it's the same exact process, just with a finer grit. What you want to do is shine a harsh light over it so that you can see little see that sharp edge there? That's part that needs to be rounded. And it's real easy to spot them if you shine a light kind of from the side and slightly towards the top, and then you just change the angle of your piece so that you can see those imperfections. And keep sanding it with the finer grit until all those go away and everything's rounded off. It's time to transfer our gill pattern onto our piece of wood. For those of you unfamiliar with this particular technique, what I've done is I've got my pattern drawn on one side and I've put that up against a piece of glass to let light shine through, and I've traced that same pattern on the other side, okay? And so what I can do then is I can place that over my piece of wood, get it lined up correctly, and I always put a push pin right in the center of the eye for two reasons. One, it'll help hold the piece of paper in the right place, and then later on when I'm done and I'm wanting to drill the eye, I've got a starter hole there. So but anyway, when I flip it over and then I start tracing that again, it rubs that graphite onto the wood. So you can see how it transfers that graphite from this side of the paper onto the wood. And then I'm going to go back over it again just to darken it up. I'm going to go ahead and drill the eye with a 3/8 inch Forstner bit. That's pretty much what we're looking for. Let's go with about a 7-inch length for hardware. Afraid of that. Oh well, we can fix it. I gotta let that set up, but also need to fill that hole. And so I'm gonna use some wood putty for that. You know, ordinarily I'd use some super glue and baking soda, but I'm thinking about leaving this wood grain intact, which I may have just ruined by drilling through, but I'm going to try and salvage it by putting some of this wood putty in there to maybe salvage that spot. Alright, I've already taken the liberty of experimenting with some weights here. As you can see, I use a hot glue gun and some pre-made lead weights in the diameters of the bits that I've got. And so I've got these stacked on there. I want this one to be a pretty fast sinking stick bait. And so that's pretty fast. If we look at it again, it's fairly level as well. But yeah, it's going to be a fast sinker. We're going to start with a 1/2 inch Forstner bit right in front of this hook hanger. Okay, and then switch over to 3/8, and I'll put another one up here. And then 2 more back here. I don't want to get too close to that hook hanger because it's at an angle like so. So what I'm probably going to do is come back here a little ways and just connect a couple. Like so. Let's see how we did. trying to watch it pretty close. It might do a little flutter. Kind of looks like it might flutter just a hair. I don't have enough depth to really see it. Yeah, there's a little flutter there. But anyway, it's balanced well enough now. You can play with hook sizes and stuff like that if you wanna make it more straight up and down, or if you want to change it a little bit. For salt water, you could just go to a single hook instead of trebles. So there's some play in there with how you balance it. You can put a ring on the nose or something like that if you want to get a little bit more nose heavy. But I think that's right about where I want it. So I've kind of learned over the time that I've been doing this to leave about 1/4 of an inch extra around the top and the bottom, but to not leave any at the ends. So when I go to install this, I know exactly what length that I've got to work with. And then the top and the bottom are generally going to be trimmed anyway, but that gives me plenty to work with, and it makes it easier for me to line it up. Yeah, see, not cool. All right, so for a while, I've been kind of wanting to do a lure that's got some exposed wood, but it's kind of hard for me to get away from this foil because it looks so good. So I've been trying to think of a way to achieve that balance where I've got this really good, foil shiny lure, but then I can also see some of the bare wood showing through. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try it. It may look terrible, but I think what I'm going to try is I'm going to cut along this lateral line here, and I'm going to expose the back of the lure in wood. And I'm not really going to do any painting to speak of on top, so that you can see that wood showing through on the finished product. Sometimes when you're working on these things, you got to take a chance. It could turn out great or it could turn out awful, but I'm gonna give it a shot on this one. If it turns out awful, I can just make some more and never ever do that again. But I'm gonna take my X-Acto knife here. I'm gonna cut right in that valley. That's gonna be my break point. Okay, but then as I get up here, I think I'm just gonna have to give it a rounded swoop, like so. What else? Oh yes, I'm gonna do some stipple work on the gills here. Let's see. Something I wanted to show you here that I didn't record because I honestly didn't know how well it would work or if it would even work. So the spot where I drilled through here on the top looked pretty awful. I tried to putty it, but then when I sanded it down, I was still hitting metal from the line tie. And so I had this big exposed spot on there, but as you can see, I've painted it to match the wood. And the way I did that is I took some transparent light brown, some opaque yellow, and then I also took some opaque white, and I mixed those, and I just eyeballed it. I kept mixing them and changing the shades until I got the right wood tone. And then I used my brush and painted over it. And as you can see, I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. You can't really see where the bare metal is sticking out. So I think that's a pretty good touch up. You know, all that to say is that no matter how bad you think you've screwed up on something, there's usually a way to fix it that's acceptable. But you know, these are handmade lures, so they're going to be imperfections and things like that on there, and you just got to do your best to make it look right and be something that you're proud of. I'm ready to brush on some clear coat. Just real quick, what I've done is I've mixed up a small batch of this East Coast epoxy resin. I've used different resins. I really like this brand because it seems to be the most forgiving. But anyway, I've mixed up equal parts by weight that I use my little scale for. And then before I brush it on, I gently wipe the foil down with some rubbing alcohol just to make sure that I don't have any fingerprints or any of the oils from my fingers or anything on it. And that'll help the epoxy adhere better. And then of course the key to this is to mix it extremely well. And you want to mix it really slowly so that you don't get a lot of bubbles in there. What'll happen is as you stir this, it'll get cloudy and then it'll turn clear again. And so once it's clear again, it's really well mixed, but you want to make sure you get a good mix on that. If you don't, it'll never fully cure and it'll always be kind of sticky. But we're putting this layer on so that we cover the edges of the foil and have a smooth surface to paint on. So I'm going to do a relatively thin coat over this. The big areas I'm wanting to get are like right here where there's a seam. I want to have enough on there so that when I paint over it, you don't see the line of the foil. And also, you can see where we're doing over the wood, that's pretty much going to be the finish for that wood. It's going to be just clear epoxy all the way down to the wood, and I think that'll look really nice. And then of course here on the bottom we're going to paint it, and it'll cover up where we've put weight in and the edges of the foil. All right, and then I'm going to put this on my wheel and let it spin and until it cures, and I'll check in with you once that's done. Now that we've got our first clear coat on, we need to cover up the seams of the foil. They are smooth now, but you can still see them obviously. So to do that, I'm going to use an opaque white. All right, now that we've got those seams covered up with opaque white, I'm going to go along the belly with pearlized white. See, I rushed it too much. If you don't build it up in slow layers, you'll get big pools like that. So it's important to slow down, spray a layer, and then maybe go to the other side, let it dry, and then come back and do the next layer. I've decided to go ahead and put the eyes on this lure before I put the second clear coat on it. What that'll allow me to do is get 2 good clear coats over them before I'm done. So I'm going to be using these. What are these? The Chubb S eyes. And if you take a look, there's 2 sheets, and they are opposite sides of the fish, so they're mirrored. Some of these packs that you get, all of the eyes are identical, and so when you put it on the other side, it's not quite correct. I don't think it makes any difference personally, but you know, if it does to you. These are sold in book matched pairs. I am of course going to super glue them on, although I've been trying a new method here. Let's give it a try. Let's see, how do I want this? I want the dark part of the eye towards the back, like so. Okay. So I'm going to stick it into place using the adhesive that it's got. And then I'm going to put a little dab of super glue on my blade here. And then when I touch that to the eye, the edge, it kind of gets sucked down in there a little bit. So all right, we're going to do an iridescent turquoise over the back, slightly, because I don't want to cover up the wood, but I do want to get a little bit of an iridescent scale pattern on there. So we've got our mesh on there, and we've got it tight up against the lure. That's the most important thing, is to just get it tight against the lure. That's it. It's just very, very slight. Okay. Now up here on the head where it's white, we're gonna go over that without the mesh, because I don't like a scale pattern on the head. So the only other thing I'm going to want to do here for this color is clean the excess off of my eye there. Alright, all done with that. Put the final clear coat on it and we'll be all done. Now let me describe to you a very real and super plausible scenario that I know we all fear. You're doing your yard work when your brand new handmade fishing lure falls out of your pocket and you accidentally run it over with the lawnmower. Can it survive being run through the lawnmower? Alright, let's take a look at what we've got here. Now I've got to warn you, this might be a little bit graphic. Oh my goodness, the carnage. Look at this. Wow. That knocked the clear coat off. Oh, check this out. A little bit of the clear coat with some of the dots on it. That is crazy. There's a couple of big pieces, but mostly it's just splinters. Oh, you can see where the blade hit it right there. Wow. Some of the clear coat and the foil. I think we're going to need a little bit more than super glue and baking soda to fix this one. What do you think? It might seem ridiculous destroying a brand new handmade wooden lure, but ask yourself, how many times have you lost a lure on a bad cast or even a dumb cast? I know I've lost my fair share. I guess what makes this one a little bit easier to accept is that at least this way it got you here and you got to see how it was made. But don't feel too bad. I made a twin for it, so I still have one I can fish with. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.